okay? So I'm gonna teach you guys about this insulin, glucagon little piece here, and I hope that this really helps you. Let's see. So we're gonna talk about the amount of glucose in the body, and we're gonna talk about time. So this side here is going to be glucose. This side here is going to be time. Now, before when I was saying it's literally trying to regulate blood glucose levels to safe levels. Now, standards, generally speaking, we're talking about, they measure blood glucose. If you're a diabetic or something, you know this when you take a blood glucose measurement. It's usually measured in milligrams per deciliter. So we have milligrams per deciliter. And then what we're looking at is a range of about 70 milligrams per deciliter to 120 milligrams per deciliter. And if you get up over like 126, things like that, those are like diabetic ranges, okay? So let's do this. I'll do 70 and I'll do 120. Okay, so you have your blood sugar level, 70 and 120. That's really like safe levels. The body's gonna try to regulate that. The body is really good at doing its own thing, okay? And the thing is, if you go above 120, that's too much blood glucose. So it has to be stored, all right? That's where insulin comes in. Now I'm gonna show you that in a second, but that's where insulin comes in. If you get too low and the body needs more glucose in the system, that's where glucagon comes in, okay? But people freak out for no reason. Like our reference ranges are terrible now because humans are metabolically inflexible. Most Americans are broken. I wanna tell you right now, this hypoglycemia thing, unless you are a type 1 diabetic, okay? Type 1 diabetic, different ball game, remove yourself from this conversation just for a second. If you're an average everyday American, unless you're horrifically metabolically broken, then you shouldn't have any problems with hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, until you're below 40. You're literally in like zero danger unless you are below 40, okay? Now again, I'm not a medical doctor. That's not medical advice. Don't take it as medical advice. I'm not pretending to be a doctor. I'm not telling you to drop your blood sugar down that low. But I did do a 4-day fast with CrossFit workouts in between and jujitsu and took daily blood glucose readings and shared them on my Instagram to show people that I didn't die of hypoglycemia, completely fasted doing ridiculously glycolytic workouts, right? So I'm gonna explain a little piece to you, then I'm gonna tell you a story about jujitsu, okay? So what's happening here is, again, if you go above a certain level, then you need to store. So let's do this. Let's say you eat, okay? So you eat food, and that makes your blood glucose go up. So I'm just gonna do this, okay? So you eat food, your blood glucose goes up. Now, if it goes up here, if it goes above this 120, then obviously you need to store that. You either need to store it, which means that insulin is gonna come into play. So boom, you come up here, insulin, boom. Okay, we're gonna shove insulin into the bloodstream. We're gonna shove glucose into muscle cells or fat cells, whichever one. If glycogen's full, we're gonna put it in fat cells. Now what happens is that insulin makes blood sugar levels go down. Now, if blood sugar levels dip too low, then boom, you get a dose of glucagon. Now, glucagon is going to strip glycogen and it's going to spit glucose out into the system. So it's going to strip down that muscle glycogen, put glucose into the bloodstream, and your blood sugar levels are going to go up as needed, okay? So if you're on a low carbohydrate diet, the body is only creating glucose as needed. It's only flooding the bloodstream with glucose as needed, okay? So I want you guys to understand that. And what's really interesting about this is I did a little test where I was 24 hours fasted, and I went to jujitsu, and I took a blood glucose reading prior to jujitsu, and then I went and did jujitsu, very glycolytic. I did a lot of rolling, a lot of actual fighting, right, in that jujitsu class. Super glycolytic, my body needed glucose, and I was 24 hours fasted, which meant my liver glycogen was definitely dead. And within the first few minutes of that rolling, I probably burned through muscle glycogen. The body's going, oh crap, we need more glucose really quick, right? Now, I'm sure, again, if I had 400 grams of muscle glycogen, I highly doubtful that I burned through that in all the rolling. But once you start losing glycogen, that's glucagon grabbing the glycogen and spitting glucose into your bloodstream. So what happened was my blood glucose level, I had spent more time fasted and did a really difficult workout, and my blood glucose after jujitsu was higher. So I had more glucose in my blood than when I started without ingesting food. What? Holy crap, right? The body needed some glucose and made it happen. That's the beauty of insulin and glucagon, these two different hormones in charge of storing and burning glucose. This is all centered around glucose. Remember, this is your blood glucose. I should probably put that blood glucose. So this whole piece is centered around your blood glucose and regulating it, okay? So remember that. The body can create its own glucose. It doesn't need to ingest it. So now that you see what this process looks like, I have one final point to make. Glucose and ketones. If you guys remember the gas tank analogy that I did, I've done that twice where I talked about just the glucose gas tank, and then I talked about ketones. When you drink exogenous ketones, you're adding to the gas tank. That's a really accurate graph that I drew for you guys. Like, that really makes a lot of sense, but it's also an oversimplification. So it's an oversimplification because I want to keep it simple for what I call the white belts, right? Most of you are white belts in nutrition. But it's a little more complicated than that. And what I mean is there are certain cells in the body that can only use glucose. The reason why we can make glucose in our bodies through a process called gluconeogenesis is because without it, certain cells couldn't function, and that would mean certain death, namely your red blood cells. Your red blood cells require glucose, okay? People try to tell you that the brain requires glucose, but that's not true. The brain can run on ketones. The brain, the heart, the kidneys, skeletal muscle, they can all run on ketones just fine, okay? But your red blood cells require glucose, which means that zero glucose in the system could be a death sentence. For that reason, what happens when levels are low enough, your body doesn't wait till it has no glucose to create glucose. It's not going to wait for that. That's a really bad idea. That'd be a bad way for the system to run. So people think that ketones and glucose compete. They don't compete. They work hand in hand. So when your glucose levels are low enough and the body creates ketones, the body is smart enough to go, oh, awesome. Okay, well, I don't need glucose for the brain and the heart and the kidneys and the skeletal muscles because now I have these ketones. So it takes the glucose and preferentially shuttles it to your red blood cells that need it because they can only run on glucose. So it shuttles them to the red blood cells, the ketones go everywhere else, and everybody's happy. It's ketones and glucose working in unison. Pretty unbelievable. It's like the body knows what it's doing naturally if we don't mess with it and break it, right? Pretty crazy. It's not this thing. Yes, the gas tank analogy is very useful. It's very useful for you to understand how burning body fat works. But there's a little bit more to the story. There's always going to be glucose in the body no matter what. That's why we have gluconeogenesis, okay? So you guys basically just got a massive class on human metabolism. And like I said in the beginning, I assure you, you probably know more than any mainstream doctor you've ever worked with. Go back and watch this again. So think about it like this, right? If you ask yourself, what would life have been like if I'd known all this? This is what I'm trying to do with Clovis. Really think about that for a second. Like, did this change your understanding of your own body? That you probably didn't know how the hell your own body worked? Probably, right? Did all this change your views on diet and nutrition and these fads? Like, oh, diet and exercise, right? Probably changed your mind on that too. Now, do you wish that all the doctors, like I said, the doctors, the personal trainers, all these people, like, do you wish that they knew that stuff before you worked with them? Yeah, 100%. I do. I wish all those trainers I paid a boatload of money to knew this shit, so I would actually get the results I wanted. I would have saved a ton of money. And on top of that, how much money would you have saved on pills and potions and diet books and programs and fitness DVDs and nonsense? There is so much out there that you can throw your money at that is complete nonsense. Never teaches you this, never teaches you how your body works whatsoever. If you want to work with somebody who understands how your body works and can teach you how your body works and can give you the tools that you need for a happy, healthy life forever, not only that, can teach you in a way that you'll be able to teach it to your kids so they can grow up and be happy and healthy and fulfilled. If that's what you're looking for, not just the blind GPS, when do I eat 4 ounces of chicken, Justin? Tell me, what hour do I do that at? I'm not the guy for you. But if I am the guy for you, go to iamclovis.com/start right now.